Welcome to the February edition of This Month in Payroll for 2025. I'm Rowan Geddes, National Leader of PwC's Payroll Advisory Practice. And after the tsunami of changes that payroll has dealt with over the last few years, I'm pleased to say that it's a relatively quiet month this month, except for the release of the Fair Work Ombudsman's updated compliance and enforcement policy. In this new environment of criminalised wage theft, the Ombudsman's attitude to compliance takes on a heightened level of importance. The compliance and enforcement policy outlines the Ombudsman's existing powers to investigate wage underpayment allegations, issue responses ranging from findings letters to infringement notices, enter into enforceable undertakings, initiate civil proceedings and impose penalties, and refer matters to the Director of Public Prosecutions or the Australian Federal Police for criminal prosecution. In the policy is an explanation from the FWO as to what is a reportable underpayment, stating that unintentional payroll errors resulting in underpayments over a short period of time, less than 12 months, don't need to be actively reported to the Ombudsman, as long as employees are appropriately informed of the underpayment, employees are paid back in full, and changes are implemented to ensure that the error does not happen again. For underpayments that cover longer periods, the Ombudsman recommends notifying them as soon as possible, outlining, to the extent that the information is known at the time of reporting, what led to the non-compliance, what actions have been taken to assess and rectify it, including back payments and interest, enhancements that have since been made to governance arrangements, systems and management training to prevent further non-compliance, confirmation that the tax office has been notified for superannuation implications, and what the level of engagement has been with third parties such as unions. In deciding a compliance path, ranging from compliance notices to enforceable undertakings to litigation, there's a number of steps that an employer can take that the FWO will view favourably. The expectations with regard to the underpayment itself are not surprising. The FWO expects that the employer will admit the contravention via voluntary disclosure and then fully cooperate and engage with the Ombudsman's subsequent investigation, remedy all underpayments to current and former impacted employees, including paying interest and superannuation, apologise to the impacted employees and establish a communication channel, such as a hotline or contact centre, where employees can discuss their personal circumstances, and agree to make a contrition payment to the Consolidated Revenue Fund. However, the compliance policy also reinforces the FWO's commitment to encouraging forward-looking behavioural change around payroll compliance. The Ombudsman indicates that it is more likely to accept an undertaking from an employer who is committed to implementing governance and accountability policies and processes to support its payroll compliance, investing in the workplace relations capability of staff responsible for payroll compliance, acting on advice from appropriate workplace relations advisors such as employer organisations or lawyers, conducting ongoing audits, either in-house or by independent experts, and providing worker representative forums that socialise and monitor compliance issues, as well as worker-friendly dispute resolution mechanisms. Included in the enforcement policy is a reminder too that if a Fair Work inspector reasonably believes there has been a contravention in relation to record keeping, pay slips or job advertisements, the inspector may issue an infringement notice. Of note is the Ombudsman's comment that it regards record keeping and payslip obligations as the bedrock of compliance, and that failure to comply with these obligations impedes an employee's ability to assess whether their employer has complied with the obligations, impedes an efficient resolution of a dispute between parties, and hampers investigations by the Fair Work inspector. Infringements of record-keeping obligations can subject an employer to penalties of up to $9,900 per contravention. The compliance policy then addresses litigation, civil and criminal, which the Ombudsman notes is generally reserved for those contraventions that are serious, systemic in nature, would uphold the integrity of the enforcement tools or serve the public interest. Examples of where the FWO is more likely to litigate involve deliberate or repeated non-compliance, exploitation of vulnerable workers, and employers who fail to cooperate with the FWO and fix contraventions after being given the opportunity to do so. The focus on wage compliance continues to rise. While the FWO is demonstrating a desire to work closely with employers and advisors through more consultation and education, the other side to this is that large, sophisticated employers who are not investing in their payroll functions, meeting their record-keeping obligations, or implementing payroll governance controls and regular monitoring are likely to be viewed dimly by the Ombudsman should issues arise. PwC has prepared a compliance checklist which can provide a useful starting point for all businesses to consider in seeking to reduce the risk of underpaying employees. This checklist poses a series of questions that management can ask in a review to assess whether their processes will ensure pay rates and entitlements are verified, accurate records are maintained, staff responsible for payroll compliance are staying informed on workplace laws, issues are addressed promptly, and payroll systems and processes are regularly audited. The link to this checklist is on this slide. And the new wage theft environment has been demonstrated again this month when the FWO secured fines of more than $5 million in a wage underpayment case related to vulnerable workers, where it was found that the employer hindered and obstructed a FWO investigation. While the actions of the employer, locking a store ahead of an inspector's visit, ordering the destruction of timesheets, threatening a worker with dismissal for speaking to an inspector and not agreeing to be engaged as a contractor, are not actions that we would ever expect from our listeners. We raise this case as an example of the regulators and the court's willingness to approve punitive penalties that are significantly higher than the wage underpayments. In this case, the wages underpaid were $140,000 to 4 workers. In Justice Katzmann's judgment, she found the breaches were deliberate and serious, noting that they occurred in circumstances in which the respondents either knew or were willfully blind to their legal obligations. Accordingly, Justice Katzmann imposed a $4.299 million penalty against the employer and a further $803,000 penalty against the 2 directors, making this the 3rd highest penalty ever achieved by the Fair Work Ombudsman. The 3 highest wage underpayment penalties have all been handed down in the last 12 months. And that's it for this month in payroll. As I said, a quiet month. However, before we close, a reminder about our first Workforce Leaders Forum for 2025. For a while now, we have identified long service leave as a developing area of focus from state regulators, given its significant complexity with employers required to navigate state, federal and industry-level regimes simply to determine an employer's eligibility to long service leave and to calculate their payment entitlements. Given this, we are delighted to host Robert Hortle, the Commissioner of Wage Inspectorate Victoria, and Georgia Potter Butler, the Director of the Industrial Relations Inspectorate in New South Wales, to share their reflections on long service leave, resulting from their recent inquiries and enforcement actions. We will also discuss the current long service leave landscape across the country, including actions employers should take to proactively monitor and safeguard their compliance. The event is at midday Australian Eastern Daylight Time on Tuesday 11th of March, and you can register for this event using the link on your screen. Apart from that, if you would like to revisit any of our prior updates, they are available on our website at pwc.com.au/payroll. And if you have any questions or need for support, please reach out to myself or your usual PwC contact. Until next time, have a great month in payroll.